Those who have seen the movie The Princess Bride know that one of the great lines in the movie begins when the couple is beginning to get married and the priest says, marrige. For a few minutes I want to talk about marriage, but before we get into the topic, I want to apologize on behalf of the legal profession and on behalf of the government. I'm not part of the government, I'm a taxpayer, but the government has failed to require certain warnings to be given to you when you get married. When you buy almost any electrical appliances, you get an instruction manual. Now this is the one for a freezer. Throughout the first few pages, there are numerous references with little hands sticking up saying, warning. If you don't use the freezer properly, it says failure to follow these instructions can result in death, fire, or electrical shock. If you somehow decide to mix gasoline in the equation, it says failure to operate within our instructions can result in death, explosion, or fire. So what's left out of the marriage vows? Because none of these warnings are given. First of all, if you get married, our income tax law does not favor married couples. There is a marriage penalty in the sense that you're going to pay more income taxes in most instances as a married couple than as a single person. Secondly, if you get married and you have IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, any type of retirement plan, and you want to change the death beneficiary, you have to get your husband or wife's permission, because they are permitted, in effect, to veto whatever you do. And you say, this doesn't sound fair. Well, just leave your beneficiary designations as you have them. Now, when you get married, you'll have certain property that is separate property. Every state is not a community property state, but some of the concepts of community property states are interesting and certainly are applicable in marriage situations, because property that you acquire during the joint industries of the parties is joint property, and that is both husband and wife have a right to certain of those property interests. And you say, well, okay, what does that mean? Well, that means that you can't disinherit your husband or wife. You say, well, sure I can. I can prepare a will and say I give all of my estate to my children. I'll make no provision for my husband or wife. The husband or wife is permitted by law in all 50 states to elect against whatever provision you've made in the will. And that's called a statutory election, or an election against the will. And they can elect to receive whatever they would be entitled to receive as if you had died without a will. And this is called not only the election against a will, but it permits the husband or wife to acquire generally about 50% of the estate. And you say, well, gee, this doesn't sound right. What can I do to fix this? Well, some couples, before they get married, enter into a prenuptial agreement. I don't suggest this at the very outset because you start off with nothing. You're marrying on the hope that you're going to be married to that person for the rest of your life. If you have a prenuptial agreement, you can say whatever is mine is mine. In other words, what I bring into the marriage is mine to keep. On second marriages, you can certainly do this, and this is not a bad idea. But if you have a prenuptial agreement, remember that there are 5 battlegrounds in marriage that will not be covered in the prenuptial agreement. Couples, by and large, fight over these 5 things: money, sex, in-laws, raising children, and building or remodeling a home. Now, outside of that, you can say, all right, we're going to do a prenuptial agreement. What's mine's mine. What we have together we'll deal with in the prenuptial agreement. If we ever get divorced or one of us dies, then we're stuck with the prenuptial agreement. We can't elect against the will because we've agreed beforehand. What if you're already married? Can you do a postnuptial agreement? Think of that in terms of an estate plan. Just sit down and say, hey, we got to decide where our estate's going to go. On this point, we certainly recommend that you have a will. We hope you would consider Willcrafter Lite, or if you want to read about these topics, there's a manual in Willcrafter that more or less explains all of these things, or at least tells you what your options are. There's a book, Your Will's Companion, which is a Kindle book or an iBook that also explains these. But having said that, perhaps the most mature question you could ask as a married couple is very simply, what are my options? What are my options? Once you know what your options are, in other words, once you know the rules of the game, then you can make plans. And I hope that your plans are good ones. And I hope you've enjoyed these videos. We will continue to add them from time to time.